Jimmy was reading the newspaper when the tremor started. It wasn't in his hands, though they'd held steady through 30 bomber missions over Germany, steady through 1,000 takes in front of Hollywood cameras, steady through decades of signing autographs for fans who believed in heroes. The tremor was somewhere deeper, in his chest, in the place where he kept the names of 5 dead boys locked away like radioactive material. The Academy invitation lay unopened on his breakfast table, its golden seal catching the Beverly Hills morning light through expensive curtains that couldn't keep out the ghosts. Gloria was humming That's Amore in the next room, the same tune she always hummed when she was happy. Coffee was getting cold in his favorite cup, and Jimmy Stewart, America's most beloved actor, was about to destroy his career. 3 weeks later, he would walk away from the biggest night in Hollywood. But the earthquake had started that Tuesday morning in October 1973. The letter opener felt heavy. 30 years of carrying secrets will do that to a man. Make simple things feel impossible. Make success taste like ash. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences cordially invites you. Jimmy already knew what they wanted to celebrate. The all-American hero. The decent man. The actor who made people believe good could triumph over evil. If only they knew what good looked like at 20,000 feet with German fighters closing in and 5 boys screaming over the radio for help you couldn't give them all. The phone rang. Jimmy let it ring. Outside, a gardener trimmed hedges. Inside, Jimmy Stewart was coming apart. "Honey, aren't you going to answer that?" Gloria called. Let it ring. But the ringing wouldn't stop. Nothing would stop. Not the dreams that came every night. Not the faces that stared at him from movie screens. Not the applause that sounded more and more like artillery fire over Schweinfurt. The invitation slipped from his fingers and landed face down on the kitchen floor. To understand what happened next, you need to understand the weight Jimmy Stewart carried every single day for 30 years. October 14, 1944. Mission to Schweinfurt. 22 B-24 Liberators over Nazi Germany, each plane carrying 10 young Americans who'd kissed their mothers goodbye and promised to come home for Christmas. Jimmy was squadron leader that day, flying 909, the lucky bird that had brought him through 29 previous missions. The autumn sky was crystal blue, deceptively peaceful, until they crossed into German airspace. Just past the border, the flak started, black puffs of death blooming in the blue sky like deadly flowers, each burst close enough to rattle the plane's aluminum bones and remind every man aboard that death was shopping for them today. That's when the radio crackled with the kind of terror that freezes blood in your veins. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Easy 6, we're hit bad, navigation's gone, can barely hold altitude." Then another voice, younger, more desperate, "This is Charlie Baker, we're on fire, need immediate escort home. 2 planes, 2 crews, 20 young men total, and Jimmy Stewart could only save 10. The choice took 3 seconds, 3 seconds that would echo through 30 years of Hollywood success. He chose Charlie Baker, Lieutenant Morrison's plane, his friend's plane. Easy 6 went down over enemy territory. 5 boys who'd never see their 21st birthdays, never marry their sweethearts, never come home. Now in his Beverly Hills kitchen 3 decades later, Jimmy was staring at an invitation to celebrate that hero. But you still don't know the worst part. The tremor spread from his chest to his hands. Because the Academy didn't know the real reason Jimmy chose Morrison's plane. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't tactical necessity. Morrison owed him money. $500 from a poker game the night before the mission. It had been a friendly game, the kind of thing young officers did to pass time before flying into hell. Morrison had been losing badly, borrowing deeper and deeper, laughing that nervous laugh men make when they're scared, and trying not to show it. "Don't worry, Jimmy," he'd said, scribbling another IOU. "I'll pay you back when we get home." When we get home, as if coming back was guaranteed, as if death wasn't waiting for them across the channel with flak and fighters and 1,000 ways to die. When the choice came, when death was screaming through his headphones and Jimmy had 3 seconds to decide who lived and who died, the thought flashed through his mind like a bullet. Morrison owes me. Such a small, human, pathetic thought. Such a selfish, ugly, unworthy calculation. But it tipped the scales in that split second when everything hung in the balance. 5 boys died because Jimmy Stewart wanted his money back. For 30 years he'd told himself it was about friendship, but late at night when bourbon couldn't wash away the dreams, Jimmy knew the truth. He'd played God with 5 lives and lost 5 souls because of a poker debt. The Academy wanted to celebrate the man who gave America its moral compass. Jimmy wanted to disappear. The phone rang again. This time Gloria answered. "Jimmy, it's for you, someone from the Academy." His hands were shaking now, really shaking. "Tell them I'm not here." "But honey." Tell them I'm not here." The silence that followed was the sound of a 30-year house of cards beginning to collapse. Gloria appeared in the kitchen doorway. She'd been married to Jimmy Stewart for 25 years, but she'd never seen him look like this. Hollow, hunted. "What's wrong?" Jimmy picked up the invitation. A lifetime of bringing dignity and humanity to the American screen. He almost laughed. "They want to give me an award. That's wonderful, isn't it? For being a good man." Gloria sat down, studying his face. "And that frightens you. It should frighten anyone who knows what I really am." But the tremor was about to become an earthquake. Because that afternoon something happened that would force Jimmy Stewart to face a choice even harder than the one he'd made over Germany. The phone rang again. This time Jimmy answered. "Jimmy, it's Frank Capra, the man who directed him in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, who'd trusted Jimmy to embody American idealism. I heard about the Academy Award. This is the crowning achievement of your career." "Have I?" Jimmy thought. "Have I really? I'm not sure I can accept it, Frank." A long pause. Then Capra's voice, harder now. "What do you mean you can't accept it? I don't deserve it. Jimmy, you've given millions of people hope. You've shown them what it means to be decent, to believe in the goodness of human nature." Each word was a nail in Jimmy's coffin, because Frank Capra believed in him, the way Morrison had believed in him right up until Jimmy chose to save him for $500. "Frank, what if everything you think you know about me is wrong? I'd say you're having a crisis that every good man goes through. That's exactly why you deserve this award." But Capra didn't understand. How do you explain that heroism and selfishness can live in the same moment? How do you tell your director that the man he cast as Jefferson Smith once let 5 boys die over a poker debt? "I can't go to that ceremony." "What are you talking about?" The silence stretched between them. Jimmy could hear Capra breathing, waiting for an explanation that would never come. "I just can't do it." After Capra hung up, Jimmy opened a bottle of bourbon. The dreams were getting worse. Every night the same 5 faces: Miller, Rodriguez, Thompson, Davis, O'Brien. Boys who trusted him to bring them home. That's when the real earthquake hit. Gloria found him 2 hours later, staring at a war photograph. Jimmy in his flight jacket, arm around Morrison, both grinning like they owned the world.
"You're going to miss dinner." Jimmy didn't look up. "Morrison sent me Christmas cards for 20 years after the war. I remember. Every card he thanked me for saving his life, called me his guardian angel." Gloria sat down. "You did save his life. I saved him because he owed me money." The words hung in the air. Gloria was processing, the way she always did when Jimmy shared pieces of the war. "How much money?" $500. "That's not why you saved him." "It is, though. When I had to choose, that's what went through my mind." Gloria leaned forward. "And the other reason?" "What other reason?" "The reason you've been carrying guilt for 30 years. If it was just about money, you'd have forgotten it. So what's the other reason?" Jimmy looked at her. In all their years together, she'd never pushed him this hard. "I loved him like a brother. I think I chose him because I couldn't bear to watch him die. The money was just an excuse to make it feel rational instead of emotional. And that makes it wrong? It makes it selfish. 5 boys died because I couldn't face losing my friend." Jimmy's voice was barely a whisper now. "I was supposed to be their leader. I was supposed to make decisions based on tactics, on strategy, on what was best for the mission. Instead, I made a choice based on friendship and money and fear of losing someone I cared about." Gloria was quiet for a long moment, studying the photograph of Jimmy and Morrison, 2 young men who looked like they believed they were immortal. "How old were you?" 26. 26 years old, flying bombing missions over Germany, responsible for the lives of dozens of men. How many impossible choices did you make in that war, Jimmy? Too many. And how many times did you choose correctly? Jimmy looked up at her, confused by the question. "This is the only choice you've ever talked about," she said gently. "The only one that haunts you. Which tells me that the other times, you found a way to bring everyone home. Or at least you tried." Gloria was quiet. Outside, the sun was setting over Los Angeles. "The Academy called back this afternoon." Jimmy's stomach dropped. "What did you tell them?" "I told them you'd call back. You need to decide, Jimmy. Accept this award or spend the rest of your life punishing yourself for being human." But that evening something happened that would make everything worse. Jimmy was at the grocery store, in the produce section, when she approached him. An elderly woman, probably 75, with kind eyes and trembling hands. "Mr. Stewart." Jimmy turned, arranging his face into the pleasant smile that had charmed audiences for 30 years. "Yes, ma'am. I wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "For my grandson." Jimmy's smile faltered.
The woman pulled out a worn photograph. A young man in army dress blues, maybe 22, standing at attention. "This is Danny. He was killed in Vietnam 2 years ago." Her voice caught on the words, the way voices do when grief is still fresh, still sharp enough to cut. Jimmy felt the ground shifting beneath his feet, the way it used to shift in the bomber when flak got too close. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry for your loss. He used to watch your movies when he was little, over and over until he wore out the film reels. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was his favorite. He said you taught him what it meant to be brave, what it meant to stand up and fight even when you're scared out of your mind." The woman's eyes filled with tears, but she pressed on with the determination of someone who'd practiced this moment in her mind for months. "When Danny was shipped overseas, he wrote me a letter. His last letter, as it turned out." She fumbled in her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn soft from handling. "He said if he didn't make it home, he wanted me to thank you personally. You showed him that being scared doesn't mean you can't be brave, that heroes aren't the ones who feel no fear, they're the ones who feel it and do what's right anyway." Jimmy felt like he was drowning in the produce section of a Beverly Hills grocery store. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright, the music too cheerful, the whole world too normal for a conversation about dead boys and borrowed heroism. "He died a hero, Mr. Stewart, leading his squad to safety. He saved 12 men before she couldn't finish." Jimmy took the photograph. "Danny looked so young, so sure of himself. I heard on the radio that you're getting some kind of big award from Hollywood. You deserve it." She patted his arm and walked away, leaving Jimmy holding the picture of a dead boy who'd believed in him. That's when something inside Jimmy Stewart finally broke. He drove home and went straight to his study. The Academy invitation was on his desk, next to the photograph of Morrison. He looked at both pictures. Morrison, who lived because of $500. Danny, who died because he believed heroes were real. Jimmy picked up the phone. "This is Jimmy Stewart. I need to speak to someone about the ceremony next week." "Oh, Mr. Stewart, this is such an honor. I'm Margaret from the Academy's event coordination. Everyone here is absolutely thrilled about your Lifetime Achievement Award. The whole industry is buzzing with excitement." Jimmy closed his eyes. The enthusiasm in her voice felt like a physical weight pressing down on his chest. "I won't be attending." The silence on the other end was deafening. Jimmy could almost hear the woman's confusion traveling through the telephone lines. "I'm sorry, sir. Could you repeat that? The connection might be. I said I won't be attending the ceremony." "Oh." A longer pause. Is there a health issue? We could certainly arrange for you to participate remotely, or perhaps someone could accept on your behalf. Mr. Sinatra has already offered." "No. No one's accepting anything. Just send the award to my house." "Mr. Stewart, I don't understand. This is your Lifetime Achievement Award. This is the highest honor we can bestow. This is what every actor dreams of their entire career." Jimmy looked out his study window at the quiet street, at the normal suburban life he'd tried so hard to maintain despite his fame, and the ghosts that followed him home every night. "I understand what it is," he said quietly, "but I can't accept it in person. Can you tell me why? Because I killed 5 boys over a poker debt. Because every time someone calls me a hero, I want to scream. I just can't. This is highly irregular. You're one of the most beloved actors in American history. Then they're going to be disappointed." Jimmy hung up. The night of the ceremony, November 7, 1973, Jimmy sat in his living room in silence while 2,000 people at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion celebrated a man who didn't exist. Frank Sinatra accepted the award on his behalf, told the audience that Jimmy was too humble to attend. The audience laughed and applauded. It was so perfectly him. But Jimmy wasn't watching westerns. He was sitting in the dark, understanding the true cost of his choices. The award arrived the next morning. Beautiful crystal etched with his name and for a lifetime of bringing dignity and humanity to the American screen. Jimmy held it for 30 seconds, then put it on a shelf where visitors wouldn't see it. For 3 months the phone rang constantly. Reporters wanted interviews. Fan mail poured in. Jimmy answered none of it. But then in February 1974, a letter arrived that changed everything. Cleveland, Ohio, Morrison's hometown. Jimmy stared at that envelope for 2 hours. "Dear Jimmy," it began in Morrison's careful handwriting, "I saw the news about the Academy Award and your decision not to attend. The reporters are calling it humility, but after 30 years of friendship, I think I know the real reason you stayed home that night. I know what you've been carrying all these years. The guilt about the choice you made over Germany on October 14, 1944. The weight of feeling responsible for the crew of Easy 6 that we couldn't save. Jimmy, I've carried that weight too. Every Christmas card I sent you, every time I thanked you for saving my life, I was really apologizing for being the one who lived. But I want to tell you something that might change how you see that terrible day. 3 weeks ago I was cleaning out my late father's attic and found a box of war correspondence I'd never seen before. Among those letters was one from our commanding officer, Colonel Harrison, written to my parents after I was reported missing and presumed dead over German territory, before you found me and brought me home. In that letter, Jimmy, and I wish you could read every word yourself, he wrote about you with a respect I'd never heard from a commanding officer. He told my parents that you'd volunteered for extra missions when other pilots were rotating home for rest, that you'd already saved 17 airmen in previous battles, sometimes risking court-martial to break formation and help damaged planes get home. He said that on the day you saved me, you'd been flying for 14 hours straight because another pilot had fallen ill, and you'd volunteered to take his mission too. He wrote about you, how you'd volunteered for extra missions, how you'd already saved 17 airmen in previous battles, how you'd been flying for 14 hours straight that day. Jimmy, you weren't making a split-second decision based on poker debt. You were making the 23rd life-or-death choice of your career. In 22 previous instances, you'd risked your life to save others. The letter said something else. The crew of EZ-6 had been flying a damaged plane that should have been grounded. Their radio had been malfunctioning for days. When they called for help, they were already too far gone to save. You didn't choose who lived and died that day, Jimmy. They did. You just made sure some mothers got their boys home. I've spent 30 years grateful to be alive. My son just graduated medical school. My daughter teaches kindergarten. They exist because you brought me home. The Academy honored you for bringing dignity to the screen, but the real honor is carrying the weight of an impossible decision for 30 years. You don't have to forgive yourself for being human, Jimmy, but maybe it's time to stop punishing yourself for it. Jimmy read the letter 7 times. That evening he answered one of the fan letters on his desk. A young veteran had written about watching It's a Wonderful Life in a VA hospital and finding hope in George Bailey's story. Jimmy wrote back, "Dear friend, thank you for your service. I hope you know that every life has value, especially the ones that seem ordinary. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is keep going, even when we can't see the purpose. With respect and gratitude, Jimmy Stewart." It was the first time in 30 years he'd signed his name without feeling like a fraud. The Crystal Award stayed on that shelf for the rest of Jimmy's life. When visitors commented on his humility, he would smile and say, "Oh, that old thing? It's right where it belongs." And for the first time since 1944, he meant it. Because Jimmy Stewart had finally learned what the Academy was really honoring. Not perfection, not the absence of difficult choices or moral complexity, but the courage to keep trying to do right, even when right was complicated, even when the answer wasn't clear, even when good men had to make choices that would haunt them for decades. The real honor wasn't walking away from that ceremony in a moment of self-doubt. The real honor was walking toward 30 years of carrying an impossible burden with dignity, of questioning his own heroism while continuing to be heroic, of understanding that being human, flawed, conflicted, tormented by conscience, isn't something to apologize for. It's something to forgive. And sometimes forgiving yourself is the hardest choice of all. Have you ever made a choice that haunted you for years? Have you ever felt like a fraud when people praised you for something you weren't sure you deserved? Jimmy Stewart's story reminds us that heroes aren't people who never struggle with doubt. They're people who keep trying to do right, even when they're carrying the weight of impossible decisions. What would you have done in Jimmy's place over Germany? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories of quiet courage. Thank you for watching.